Hi, everyone. So I'm sure that you remember back in October, we took the MAP test. And the MAP test is really important for several reasons, but one of the most important reasons that we take the MAP is so that we can see and sort of track your progression over time. So the MAP test is not a single test that you take once a year. You actually take a MAP test several times a year, every year through the end of high school. And it helps us to see how you're progressing over time. So when you take this test, you're not just given some information about how you're performing academically in that moment, but your score is actually compared to how you did in previous MAP tests, so that you can see your progress and even predict progress for the future. So, because this is a test that you are going to take again multiple times this year, you have another one coming up in the winter, and I want to make sure that before you approach that winter MAP test, you are familiar with how you scored in the fall, so that you can maybe set some goals for yourself in terms of how you might perform in the winter MAP test. And so, in preparation for these conferences, I'm going to be starting to meet with you all each individually starting tomorrow. And in preparation for those meetings, what I'd like for you to do is spend some time familiarizing yourself with MAP so that you understand some of the acronyms that I use and so that you understand what your score means when we meet tomorrow. So today you're familiarizing yourself with MAP and RIT scores so that tomorrow you know exactly what it is that we're talking about when we talk about your specific scores. So, first of all, I think it's important that we talk a little bit about what the MAP test is and how it goes about assessing your academic performance or your academic ability. So first of all, it's important to note that the MAP test is what's called an adaptive test. And what this means is not all students are asked the same exact questions in the same order and given the same number of questions and the same time to complete them. This test will adapt itself, or it will change based on how you answer the questions. Essentially, if you answer a question correctly, then the next question is going to be more challenging. If you answer a question incorrectly, then the next question after that will be one that is less challenging. And the great thing about this adaptive sort of strategy is that it helps us to get more accurate results in determining what your score is or where you are performing academically in specific subjects. After you've taken the test, how you answer each question is factored into determining your RIT score, or essentially the score that you're given based on how you perform in the test. So your RIT score helps us to understand where it is that you're performing academically in comparison to the national average. So that's really a complex idea there. Let's unpack that a little bit. What you're looking at on the screen here is the 2020 Reading Student Achievement Norms. So essentially, this is the layout for national averages for the MAP test, for the MAP reading test by grade level. So here you have this column is grade. Obviously, we're in ninth grade here. In the next three columns are subdivided from three. So we have the fall test, then the winter test, and the spring test. So we're going to be discussing the fall test that we took back in October. So if we go to ninth grade, we can see that the mean, or the average, the national average, is about 218.90. What that means is all the test takers, all the students who took MAP test in fall, their scores were factored and computed in order to find the national average. So the average ninth grader in fall 2020 took the MAP test and received a 218.90. No, that does not mean that most students scored this number exactly. That's not at all what I mean. The national average is 219, but in fact, most students actually scored within a range of this number here. And that's where this number comes in. So next to the national average is this 1902. And if we go all the way up to the top, we see that that means that's an SD number. And SD stands for standard deviation. Basically, all you need to know is, yes, the national average for ninth grade was 219, but the majority of ninth graders scored within a range of this number, and the range is 1902. So 19 above or below the mean or the average here. Pretty much, to put it in simple terms, you can look at this chart and see that the national average, so most ninth graders that took the MAP test in the fall, scored 19 above or below this number. So we're looking at the range being somewhere between 200 and 238. That is the national range for the MAP test in the fall for ninth graders. Most ninth graders scored somewhere between 200 238. So when we meet tomorrow, we're going to be talking about where you scored, what your RIT score was, and we're going to be taking a look at where it fits in the range and how far above or below the national average you scored. Now, notice also that there are already numbers for the winter and spring MAP test. So they already have projected scores or projected means for the ninth grade tests for the winter and the spring. So also when we meet tomorrow, we're going to not only be talking about your current RIT score, but we're going to be making some projections or setting some goals for how you perform in the coming MAP tests. Okay, and lastly, now we're going to talk a little bit about this student report scorecard here. This is what I'll be showing each of you tomorrow. So for each of you, everybody that takes the test gets this individual student report, and it's just sort of like a quick glance at how you did. The first thing that I want to note or point out to you is you are given, here is your RIT score here. You're given a RIT score. This student scored a 231. And this score here is an average of the 3 different areas that you were tested in. So this person tested for informational text at 227. This person for literature tested and scored a 228. And in vocabulary acquisition and use, this person tested quite high, a 239. Over here, you're going to find the growth. Now, many of us do not have this yet because you will only have received a growth score if MAP has previous data from other tests that you've taken. So if this is the first time you've ever taken a MAP test, you may not have this growth number here. But everyone will get this achievement above or below mean here. Basically, here's the scale, and this arrow will indicate where you tested in comparison to the national average. So remember, the national average was about a 218 for ninth graders. This person scored a 231, and so the 218 would be right in the center here. 231 is just above the national average. Below here, we're talking about projections for future tests that you'll take at some point in your high school experience. You are going to be taking the ACT and the SAT. These are college prep tests. And based on this person's current achievement level, by the time they take these tests, according to the data that they have now and the projections, this student can expect to pass, assuming that they continue to progress in the same way that they have so far according to their MAP scores. Lastly, the very last thing that we'll probably discuss in terms of your MAP test is how you scored according to Lexile and grade level in terms of reading. So this person scored a 1,185L to 1,335L, and that translates to a reading level or Flesch-Kincaid grade level, 6.6 to 7.3. Okay, so we have just discussed MAP, and hopefully, what you learn in this video will help you to be prepared for our conversations about your scores tomorrow. If you have questions, of course, you can email me. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow.